T-Wolves go toe-to-toe with the NBA's best in Boston tonight, but come up short in overtime. Don't worry, though. I got Wolves expert Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman, on Twitter, at JRBorman13. And before we get into all the action, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. $150 when you bet just $5. Check it out and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, man, let's jump right into it. We got a lot to cover from this one. I'll tell you what. I mean, here's the A topic going in. Wolves had all the excuses in the world tonight, right? Back end of a back-to-back. No Conley. No Rudy Gobert. Their friggin' plane flew into Boston late this morning instead of late last night due to some nasty weather. So here you go. You got all the excuses you can handle. 10.5-point underdogs, and yet they still go toe-to-toe with the NBA's best, push this one to overtime in a place, by the way, that's shown to be, virtually impossible to win at this season. Celtics, a perfect 7-0 at the Garden heading into tonight. But Jack, what's the front page read tomorrow morning after that tough yet gutsy showing in tonight's 127-120 loss to the Celtics?
Yeah, I think it just shows, oh my goodness. Tough start for me here. I just think it shows that, this Timberwolves team, gave you every reason why everyone is so high on them this season in that fourth quarter, when they kind of took hold of the game there. And just that, this is a team that is just going to fight like their lives depend on it. They play really connected, inspired basketball, late in games, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And it feels like every night there's just a new contributor that pops up and is totally integral in why the game is either as close as it is, if it's a tough night, why they ultimately win the game, or why the game was, as good as it was. And you saw that tonight. Nickeil Alexander-Walker in that fourth quarter had 10 of his 15 points in the fourth quarter, made all 4 of his shots, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. And he was having a tough night before that quarter, and then out of nowhere just steps up, and that's just the fabric of this team. There is zero. This is just for me personally. Like I'm generally an optimist, but I think I've been fair and critical when it calls for it. But you won't get a whole lot of criticism out of me for this game tonight. I think that the Timberwolves played as well as they possibly could have, considering the circumstances. And when you think about guys like Karl Anthony Towns, 44 minutes, Anthony Edwards, 46 minutes, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 40 minutes, Kyle Anderson, 39 minutes. Like on the heels of playing last night, the travel issues, all of it, the Celtics only being down Porzingis, like you're just not going to get a whole lot of gripes out of me from this game. I was just really pleased with the way that this team fought. That should be, I think, what everybody remembers and takes away from this game. And it's just been a treat to watch these two teams go at it in these 2 overtime games that we've had back in Minneapolis in November and now in Boston tonight. Just really special fight and back and forth from both of these teams.
You can make a case, the 2 best games of the season. You can make a case. Yes, there's other competitors in there, but you can make a case.
Certainly the best like 2-game series of any 2 teams for sure.
100%. Absolutely. And let's dive a little bit more into it. Hey, got to play 48 minutes. Wolves played as great as you can ask, man. 43, 44 minutes. But those last couple minutes started to fall apart in some ways. Got to give credit to Tatum and the Celtics. Give credit where credit's due. I get that. It was 106-97, though, with 3.5, 4 minutes to play. And again,
3:35.
Okay, 3:35. Thank you. And again, credit to the Celtics. I get it. They just made more plays than the Wolves at the end, made those shots. I think between this one and the Mavs game, Wolves maybe shaking their head after letting a few big ones slip away in the closing moments. And you just mentioned it, it's something new every night, for good, maybe sometimes for bad. But what did frustrate you the most about the way this one ended, whether it was regulation or in overtime? And I guess any common themes between tonight and the way that Mavs game ended last week? For me personally, it's like, okay, I know you want to be aggressive. Jaden following out within the first 60 seconds of OT, that was kind of tough to swallow. But I would love your 2 cents on how things unfolded at the end. Like, what's the biggest self-inflicted wound maybe that's going to keep you up tonight?
I think it was certainly that. I will personally sleep like a baby tonight. I hope, knock on wood.
Good.
But but it was certainly that play from Jaden McDaniels. I mean, the Timberwolves just didn't really have anyone else that was super capable of making life difficult for Jason Tatum. I think Kyle Anderson has certainly bailed out Jaden McDaniels several times this season, but it's a tough ask. Second night of a back-to-back. He's played way increased minutes tonight. But yeah, I think, that self-inflicted wound, I guess, was the most frustrating one for sure, considering that also fouled him out and then gave the Celtics a free point plus possession. And not great and totally not needed. And Jaden now has had a repeated pattern of not understanding how valuable he is to the team by making these really just frankly immature and inexperienced decisions over and over and over again in tight and close games. It feels like they haven't had him more than they've had him, which is just a bummer. But yeah, it's some common themes between tonight and Dallas for sure. Just the fact that Boston switched. They switched a ton, 1 through 5. They played a really funky matchup zone that the Timberwolves seemingly figured out in the second and third quarters with much better ball movement and player movement. I thought that they did a much better job of setting screens off the ball for players. More guys were screening. They did a much better job of cutting. And they only had 9 turnovers tonight in overtime, with an extra 5 minutes included against, one of probably the best defense that isn't the Timberwolves in the league so far this season. And the fact that they just really reverted and got away from that and reverted to a lot of isolation basketball. And late in the fourth quarter and overtime, I think that this is one of those games that shows you that Anthony Edwards, for as incredible as he is, unquestionably, there's a reason why he is not quite in that tier 1 or maybe even tier 2 of NBA stars right now. And it's because of what you saw in the fourth quarter. I think he had, two bad turnovers in that fourth quarter, or excuse me, 1 bad turnover in that fourth quarter. And then I think he had 2 more in overtime that were both just killers. And, all 3 of those turnovers, I believe, resulted in points the other way for Boston in really big moments. And so you've just got to find a way to not get caught up in the air before you're making passes like that. And you've got a co-star, man. Like I'm sure Andrew got used to not playing with Karl Anthony Towns because he had to do almost everything himself last year. But you've got Karl Anthony Towns, man. And Karl Anthony Towns was creating shots for himself. I think easier than Ant was for most of the night. And the fact that he didn't get a shot in the fourth quarter was unfortunate. And the only reason the Timberwolves didn't lose by 10, 12, 15 points in overtime was because Karl Anthony Towns scored the first 6, right out of the gates with that and 1, and then that big 3-pointer. So just some things for Ant and Jaden to learn. It was a lot of immaturity and inexperience, I guess, in some of these really big crunch time games from the Timberwolves in terms of their decision making on both ends of the floor. When you also consider what Naz Reid did coming up to foul Jason Tatum when they're in the bone, 2 free points again to tie the game, and just kind of felt like every single time the Timberwolves grabbed any momentum late in the fourth quarter and overtime, they just gave it away, and that was really unfortunate.
The monster in the comments section saying they really miss Conley at the end. Obviously, I think that's fair. I think in any close game that you lose, probably going to be able to say that. I'm just curious, how much different do you think this one looks tonight if Conley or Rudy played tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know because Nickeil Alexander-Walker probably wouldn't have been on the floor in the fourth quarter. And he was a huge reason why the Wolves built that 9-point lead to begin with. And he certainly, he had that dumb offensive foul where he just rammed into Derek White for no reason. But outside of that, he was an overwhelming positive in the fourth quarter. And that's who Mike would be playing over. So, You could say that, yeah. I think that he for sure would have helped when the offense got awry a little bit late in the fourth quarter. And they could have, put the ball in his hands more. But, hey, I mean, if you're Chris Finch, if you're Carl, like Chris Finch had timeouts. Karl-Anthony Towns could have just said, hey, man, like, let's try something different. They put the ball in Kyle Anderson's hands late in games a ton last year, even when Mike Conley got here. And they opted not to do that and just kept it in Ant's hands the whole time. And the results were not great after Ant was really tremendous for a stretch there in the fourth quarter. But tough to not have Mike, but
sure.
in the macro,
yeah.
I don't think it's fair to put that on Mike or be frustrated that Mike didn't play tonight. I think it is incredible that it has taken Mike Conley 36 games before missing a game.
Yeah.
It's all credit to him and the way he takes care of him.
Well said, for sure. And again, you don't know. I mean, absolutely, you don't know. And again, to your point, played really good towards the end of this game as well. But yeah, tough pill to swallow for sure. Knowing, hey, this one was right in your hands. You went blow for blow with the NBA's absolute best in an absolute slugfest. Again, another ESPN classic between these two teams. I kind of want to dive into the games within the game here for a few minutes. Again, try to find some positives here. Not a game the Wolves were even supposed to be a part of. I thought the paint play really stood out to me, at least early on through the first, 3.5 quarters or so. How in the world did the Wolves manage to win in the paint for most of this one without Rudy Gobert and deliver, really for the most of the game, great defense down low all night? What'd you see there?
Yeah, I was really pleased with the way the Timberwolves defense rotated all night long. You saw that possession with, I want to say, about 2 minutes left in overtime where they just made, or 2 minutes left in regulation, I believe. Or yeah, it was 2 minutes left in overtime where they just made all these crazy rotations and forced all these extra passes. And that really was indicative of the way that they played for the majority of the night. I thought that the way that they forced the Celtics into taking mid-range shots and preventing them from getting all the way to the rim was huge. The Celtics shot 9 of 28. That's about 32% on mid-range shots tonight, and that was about a third of their shot diet. They shot more mid-range shots than they shot at the rim, which was really important. And the Timberwolves contested every single shot, seemingly, that was in that short mid-range or at the rim area. Naz Reid, Karl-Anthony Towns, Kyle Anderson, McDaniels, Ant even were all tremendous in their work in doing that. And then on the other end of the floor, I was really pleased with the way that the Timberwolves didn't really get shell-shocked by the Celtics making all these threes early in the game. The Celtics, I believe, started 6 of 10 from 3. And they just really kept it going. They didn't make a lot of threes in the second quarter, but that third quarter, fourth quarter, overtime, they were hitting. And the Timberwolves just didn't really let it deter them from attacking the paint and getting inside and playing the way that they want to play. And it's just been refreshing to watch that all season long. I think that they just grind you down and keep grinding and just kind of banging away with that pickaxe down in the mine and end up profiting over the course of the game. And that was exactly what happened. And then too, when they contested shots, they rebounded phenomenally well. I think they had only allowed 4 offensive rebounds all game before they allowed that Drew Holiday offensive rebound on the free throw in regulation that ended up resulting in that, or was it Derek White, one of the two guys that ended up resulting in the Drew Holiday go-ahead 3. So, I think all those areas were much improved for the Timberwolves tonight. And I thought just their activity in general, especially on the defensive interior, was really strong. And how much of that is those guys know that Rudy's not there, so they kind of kick it up a notch, versus something that you'll continue to see once Rudy returns. Obviously we don't know, but nonetheless, still really good to see them, pick up the slack even in his absence.
Yeah, a lot of positives to take away from this one for sure, despite the loss in overtime. Plenty more deep dive from this one right after a quick word from BetterHelp. What are some things you want to keep the same about yourself or about your life in 2024? Where are you already crushing it? Start thinking the opposite of new year, new you, and try ditching all the New Year's resolutions and start expanding on what you already do right. Maybe that's organizing the closet or the garage. I know that's something that I always struggle with. Maybe you take those daily vitamins and stay healthy during the new year, and now you're looking to take it to the next step. Well, therapy can help you find your best strengths and maximize your own specific skill set so you can finally ditch the extreme resolutions. Instead, therapy can help you make the changes that really stick over the long term once and for all. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHealth a try. It's entirely online and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your time frame. And it's so easy. All you got to do, fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched up with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. It's time to start celebrating the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, let's pick back up here. I think another major key in this one, the turnovers, man. Super low game in that department for both teams. 16 in the game total, 8 from each team. That's something I know it's been a major thorn in the Wolves' side the last month or so, not taking care of the ball. Finch has talked about that a lot the past few weeks specifically. Talk to me about what you saw in that department, and maybe how it correlated to some rhythm versus that switching zone defense as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, the Celtics, like I said, they play a really, really unique style of defense where they just confuse the heck out of opposing offenses. They line up in kind of a matchup zone and then just kind of switch to man-to-man fluidly out of it, and they communicate really well. So it's really tough for kind of opposing offenses to understand, all right, is this a man concept? Is this a zone concept? And kind of how do I space the floor? Where do I go when I don't have the ball? All those things are a little bit different depending on the type of defense the opponent is playing. And I thought the Timberwolves obviously started slow. They were pretty stagnant offensively while they were figuring that out. They kind of found a rhythm and then went away from it. But the most important thing was, regardless of the defense that was played, I thought the majority of the night they did a really good job spacing the floor. And that'll certainly help when, you aren't playing 2 7-footers together, or you're not playing Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert on the floor at the same time. And the big difference I thought was that with how spaced out the floor was, the Timberwolves were able to get all the way to the rim for the most part. And when you're able to get all the way to the rim versus having to stop in the mid-range, not only is it easier to shoot, get a shot off at the rim rather than turning it over, but it's also kind of easier to create passing lanes for yourself in terms of once you get all the way to the rim or to the baseline, there's just less defenders that you have to contend with. Whereas if you stop short in the mid-range, all 5 guys on the floor can kind of collapse and sag in, and the passing lanes that you have available to you just aren't necessarily there as much as they are when you get all the way to the baseline. And so I thought the spacing as a result of the ball and player movement, even though they didn't assist or have assists at a super high rate, I think only half of their baskets tonight were assisted. Yeah, 22 of 44 made field goals. I still thought their kind of kinetic energy offensively, both ball and player movement, was better. And so I think that that's something that they can certainly, try to take with them, as they play another team that's going to switch a ton in the Clippers on Saturday. But again, you're going to have Rudy Gobert, you're going to have Mike Conley back for those games. And so those guys obviously, are a little bit different in terms of, well, I should say Rudy specifically is a little bit different in terms of how the spacing is when he's out there. And so I think that might've been something that was more unique to tonight without him playing. But again, even when he's off the floor and you get 5-out lineups with Carl and Kyle and Naz Reid and Nikhil and, and some of those guys, I still think that it's something that you can look, kind of pull from this game as a positive and try to carry with you, at least in those more 5-out settings, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, I know a lot's been made about the Wolves bench this year. In fact, we touched on the trade deadline a bit last night, which is about 4.5 weeks away. Maybe they'll be active in that department. In fact, I know you guys did a deep dive on possible trade scenarios on today's basketball party episode. So make sure to go check out that episode if you haven't already. But in a game without Rudy and Mike, you knew everyone else, if they were going to have a shot in this one, again, 10.5-point underdogs, if they were going to have a shot, everybody else was going to have to elevate their play, step into a bigger role tonight, so to speak. And you can make a case as good as Ant and Cat were in this one, Naz Reid, slow-mo, let me say that again, slow-mo, and just monster parts of this team's ability to make this one as close as it was. If I were to tell you those three put up 51 points combined tonight, you'd think I was nuts. So what'd you think of the way those guys stepped up tonight?
Yeah, I thought it was really admirable, especially the way that Kyle Anderson played. I think that in part, I think Wolves fans are so kind of taken aback and shell shocked and surprised at how good this team has been this year that they're like almost searching for things to be frustrated about, or things are going so well that when one player isn't playing his best or isn't playing the exact same way he was playing last season, it just sticks out to them, and they keep harping on it and complaining about it. I've seen a ton of complaining about Kyle Anderson, and for the record, I'm a lot more pro Kyle Anderson than most people. I don't think most people that are watching these games understand how valuable he is defensively. Like, I think you could make an argument that he has been better than Jaden McDaniels defensively this season. He has bailed out Jaden McDaniels a ton on the defensive end of the floor. Like, when Jaden would get in foul trouble last year, 2 years ago, the Wolves really struggled to stop anybody. And that has not been the case this season when Jaden's been out. And when Jaden's gotten in foul trouble. I mean, a lot of the times it's been Kyle Anderson, especially on bigger, more physical guys, who has stepped up and played really good defense. But they've got to give him his flowers nights like tonight, where season high 17 points, 8 rebounds, which is second best this season, 5 assists, a block, a steal, and 0 turnovers in 39 minutes. Like, could have he made a couple more shots, on these little floaters, or maybe passed out instead of taking some contested floaters? Sure. But I thought largely he was incredible, made a ton of contested rebounds tonight, moved the ball really, really well, and provided some really important scoring in that fourth quarter when they were just going shot for shot with the Celtics. He made some crazy acrobatic layups that kind of helped stem the tide and kept the Wolves in front. And then, that's a great point too, in the middle of the zone. He's been the antidote for that. But the Celtics are, again, a team that you're not really able to use the middle of the zone with how they'll switch out of it and have that guy that's at the bottom of the 2-3 kind of step up to the free throw line and then play man from there. It's usually Drew Holiday. But Naz Reid, second straight double-double, hadn't had one before last night, has 2 in 24 hours, and then added 3 assists and 3 blocks to go along with it. The way that he's able to scale his game up and down based on what the game plan calls for is awesome. I thought the way he moved his feet when he was playing the 3, because when he plays with Carl and he plays with Kyle Anderson, he's generally guarding the 3 or the small forward. And the way that he moved, there was a possession where he stayed with Drew Holiday on the drive and blocked his shot, was just incredible. And again, for him to play 38 minutes again tonight and still be that impactful. Obviously, there was a tough foul at the end of the game with Tatum, but I don't think you can let that take away from what he did all night. I mean, when you think about 36 points, 18 rebounds, and 8 assists between those guys, between those two, really fun to see those two guys play off of each other, and then with Nikhil as well, man. Just the way that you're able to bounce back from a tough first 3 quarters to just play to pretty much pitch a perfect game in that fourth quarter was awesome. And for Nikhil to play the last 17 minutes of that game was really commendable at the level that he did. And so, obviously you try to suss out from here is like, all right, how much of this can continue, right? Can Slow-Mo continue this play when he's playing at the 3 instead of the 4 alongside, Gobert and Towns or something like that? And that's where I think it gets kind of tough, and you try to, I guess, sussing out what'll be able to stick with them, what'll be able to, just say this was more of just this game. I think we don't know yet at this point, obviously, but certainly a step in the right direction for both of those guys. And it's now been the second, third, fourth game that Naz has really had it rolling offensively, and the Wolves will, certainly need that as they kind of get through the doldrums of January, heading into the All-Star break.
Yeah, tough loss for sure. One you want back, especially, again, we already talked about the way the last 3.5 minutes ended. But like you've been harping this entire 25 minutes, still plenty of positives to take away from this one.
No question.
I know Ant's going to take a lot of heat for getting sloppy again at the end tonight. And I know we touched on this last night, but the guy did just pass Chauncey Billups' 5th fastest all-time franchise history with his 1,000th assist tonight. And again, I know you kind of already touched on it last night, but in case people missed it, what does that milestone say about his game and about the ceiling for what's yet to come, knowing, just how young he still is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it represents a lot of growth that we've seen from Anthony Edwards, since he's been drafted, really. I mean, when he got drafted, he was not a playmaker at all. All he could do was score. Obviously, was insane. The athlete, could play some defense on the ball, but has really grown into becoming a playmaker. And I think, when you look at guys ahead of him on that list, there's been a lot of young point guards that have played early in their careers for the Timberwolves, guys who are playmakers. So for Ant one to be available for as many games as he has this early in his career, and the best availability, or the best ability, is availability. And when you combine that with an eager willingness to learn and grow as a player and grow into a player that's not just a scorer but is able to use his scoring to make life easier for others and become a passer, I think it really speaks to how his game has evolved over his first handful of seasons here in the NBA. It's just been really cool to see him, continually, hit all these milestones and be able to just, I guess, kind of take a step back and be reminded of how cool it's been to watch him grow, and how lucky we all are to have a player like him, at the center of things here. I know that people are going to talk about the trade deadline and the tax crunch beyond the season and all the things that could make the future of this team somewhat murky, I guess, in terms of who's going to be around him and Jaden McDaniels. But, with him at the center, it's hard not to be really excited. And hopefully he can, reach 2,000 twice as fast as he reached 1,000, because I really think he's grown that much as a player.
All right, couple quickies to close before we wrap up. But first, a quick word from FanDuel. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $150 in bonus bets when you place any $5 wager. That's $150 in bonus bets when you throw down just $5 on any bet. You don't even have to win anymore. This promo was made for a guy like me. I know you're going to love it too. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get in on all the action. The app, it's so easy to use, and they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, over-unders, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season, and it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. All right, last one before we get out of here. I know they lost, right? I get it. But just how much of a statement does that performance make on a national media scale? Because I think, despite how good they've been all year, you could argue the Wolves maybe still not getting the respect that's probably due. Still feels like everyone's just kind of waiting for them to drop back down to earth at any, minute, any moment. And again, they had all the excuses in the world tonight to just lay down 11-point underdogs in the Garden. They already won last night. They're on the back-to-back. No one would have been shocked or mad or upset, I don't think, if they just flushed this one and moved on to the next one. Where should the level of respect be now after this tough, gritty performance in the Garden? And when will enough be enough to prove this team's for real and they're here to stay?
Yeah, I think tonight would have been a lot more of a statement if they had won, simply because the Celtics were undefeated at home. They are the best team in the league. And then I think that it would become more of a talking point of, hey, the Wolves beat the Celtics. Not only did they do it in Boston, break that home winning streak record, but they also did it without Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. Whereas now it's, it was a close game. Cool.
Yeah, but close game, overtime, Garden, no Conley, no Rudy.
But I'm just saying, like, from a national media perspective, I don't think that those people are going to take that context into account necessarily. But for people locally, like I'm not going to name names, but there are people out there that like are just like just now tuning in because the Viking season is over and being like, oh, same old Wolves. Let's see if they can hold on and change it and prove they're a different team. But it's just like, for people that have been watching all season, like you should be able to appreciate how hard this team played in the fourth quarter. Like, even if you haven't watched the Timberwolves at all season long, and you kind of listen to the broadcasters say the fact that they're doing this shorthanded with the context and all that, they're saying that all game long. So if you are even remotely paying attention, you can appreciate just how hard fought they played instead of just narrowing and tunnel visioning on the result and maybe their offense just in overtime. But I just think it speaks to how hard this team plays. And when you play that hard every night and you have guys that buy in on the level that they have, play as connected as they do, and appreciate and encourage one another the way that they do, you got to appreciate it. And instead of, looking at 26-10 and complaining about, is this the same old Wolves because they, I guess, lost a game that they should have lost down the stretch against a team that has 5 times as much playoff experience as they do, and big games in these moments, especially playing at home. We're probably just not going to get along very well if that's what you're pointing to and looking at and coming on Twitter to cry and complain about. So it's also just not very great way to like ingratiate yourself with sports fans that watch the Wolves or cheer for the Wolves and want to hear what you might say about the Wolves. It probably turns them off pretty quick to what you might say. So I've got nothing but positive things to take away from this game. Moving forward. I'm sure we can nitpick and look at some of the things that they didn't do all that well in this game. But I think in the macro, this game is nothing but a positive and shows, what this team is capable of and how deep they are. And, and just how much they really care about winning on every single night. And that's something that's pretty rare in the NBA, especially, especially for a team like the Timberwolves that has plenty of guys who have been paid and could just kind of be resigned to the fact that, they've made a ton of money and the results are going to be the results and they're going to enjoy the fruits of their labor. But all these guys are really competitive, love each other, really enjoy spending time with one another, being around each other and playing with each other. And I think that's really commendable and something that's been a joy to watch. And tonight was, one of, I guess, 37 nights or 36 nights that we've all really enjoyed watching this Timberwolves team for the most part. So
No, well said. Well done tonight. As always, great stuff. These can be a roller coaster night to night. You never know what you're going to get, but at least we've got an elite NBA mind like yourself to help us break it all down. So I appreciate that. Wolves lose a tough one in OT tonight versus Celtics, 127-120. But like Jax mentioned all episode, plenty of positives to take from this one with no Rudy Gobert and no Mike Conley. Finally back at home versus the Blazers this Friday. Tip-off, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And as always, huge shout-out to everyone that joined us in the postcast tonight. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Make sure to check out all of Jack's work as well on Twitter, at JRBorman13. And quick reminder, you can always check out Jack on the Minnesota Basketball Party with our guys Sam Ekstrom, Ron Johnson, Reggie Wilson from Care 11 every Wednesday afternoon as well. One more reminder, if you haven't already, go check out Ben Beacon over on the Locked On Wolves podcast as well. That'll do it for us tonight. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.